Let's bring out Ric Bucher. We get him in studio covering the NBA for almost 30 years. His podcast, On the Ball with Ric Bucher. Bukes, great seeing you as always.
Thank you. Got one person out there clapping.
But
at home, they're going nuts.
Golden State situation, because you know it well. I am generally we won a title, upgrade.
Right.
I am always an upgrade.
Right.
Boston has clear needs. Golden State, you could argue, has needs. But I watch Wiggins and Clay and Looney's size, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'd move anything. Am I falling in confirmation bias? Am I falling in love with the moment? Is there a move do you think they are contemplating with this group?
The only move I could see potentially is trading James Wiseman to get somebody that they believe they know is going to be healthy. If there's questions about Wiseman's health. But other than that, no, it's a matter of holding on to everything. And this is the great value of having won the championship, is that they now have this whole group. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody didn't play a whole lot, but they were around that experience. They got to see firsthand what it takes to win a championship. Andrew Wiggins is now a championship caliber player. The flip side is if you lose, much like when they lost after being up 3-1 against the Cavaliers, like you'd say, oh, you were right there. They changed everything. Now, they had the opportunity to get Kevin Durant, so obviously you take advantage of that, but Harrison Barnes was gone, and they remade that team. I believe that they would have done the same thing if Boston had won the series in spite of them being on the cusp. But having won it now and having these younger pieces that are coming up, it's the biggest challenge is going to be as Jordan Poole gets better and wants a bigger role, how do you fit him with Klay Thompson? Like, guys are going to, Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins becoming a more important defensive player. Draymond has to make room for that. Now, I'm not saying he won't or they can't, but the egos now have to shift, and you have to accept that in spite of being a 4-time champion, you may be making room for the next guy.
Right.
And are you willing to do that? But that, with Steph Curry leading the charge and the culture that they've created, I would fully expect that they're capable of doing that. So, no, keep it together if you can. Losing Kevon Looney is I know there are teams out there that are very much want to get him and may overpay. And while they are paying a ton in luxury tax, at some point you got to go, okay, is it really worth, if I got to pay $30 million for this guy, is it worth doing that?
So it's impossible. When I lived in New England, I'm not somebody beholden to tradition, but when you live in New England like I did for 10, 11 years, you feel it. The prep schools, the churches, the labyrinth of things that won't
I went to school in New England, so I know that feeling.
So in Boston, you cannot live in Boston, whether you're driving by Fenway, the churches, the Cape. People have been vacationing for 100 years. Teams become their cities. Los Angeles teams are acquisition teams. LA is an acquisition city. We tear stuff down. We just go buy new stuff. So Boston, I think, struggles with making big moves with basketball because they got to the finals. They got their guys. This is what we do. We draft, develop. We trust our acumen and our IQ. And I was last night fishing around on the internet, and everybody's like, you can't move Marcus Smart. And I'm like, time out, time out, time out. To some degree, a lot of this is the stock market. Buy low, sell high. Marcus Smart, this is a loaded team with a rim protector defensively, 2 elite wing defenders. You don't need more defense. You need a scorer. You didn't have enough scores. Your offense dried up against the Warriors, who, by the way, next year bring in Kuminga, Wiseman size, more athletic Moody. Warriors could be better defensively next year. And I look at the Bradley Beal thing, and I'm like, Boston, this is not you. This is not of you. I would move Beal for Smart and picks tomorrow if I was Boston.
I would not. And it's not a matter of you're looking at it on paper and saying we need to add something offensively because our offense bogged down. And defensively, we were really good. But Marcus Smart is the spiritual leader of that team. He is what Draymond Green is for the Golden State Warriors. He infuses a lot of their toughness. He is the guy who called Jaylen Brown and Marcus and Jason Tatum out to say, we need to play a different way.
But Draymond translates to rings. Marcus doesn't. It's easier for me to move off, hey, man, he's the spiritual. Well,
okay.
Show me the bag. What do I get for that?
Okay, but as much as Marcus Smart wasn't everything that I would expect, or I expected him to be in the finals, Jason Tatum was a greater disappointment.
But I can't move off him.
Why not?
Oh, he's your best young athlete. He's your best young player.
Better than Jaylen Brown? Jaylen Brown, to me, demonstrated that at least he was going to be aggressive in his mistakes.
Listen, they're not moving off Tatum. That would be so un-Boston. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't bring themselves.
But you're saying they're not going to move off of Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart gives me a good offensive game in an offensive league every third or fourth game. Jason Tatum gives me 27 on most nights.
Okay, but so you're doing that for Bradley Beal.
Because he's an elite scorer.
He's an elite scorer, but what I need is a playmaker. That's where Marcus Smart comes up short. Or when he disappears, that's what I'm missing.
It would be great to have an elite playmaker. The perfect player's not on the market. You had Kyrie, but he was a nightmare chemistry-wise.
But if you told me that I was going to get Bradley Beal for Jason Tatum, I would make that trade.
Oh,
I would go with Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Bradley Beal.
If Robert Williams isn't on the floor, Horford's old. You get small fast. You are small.
Yeah, but it's not as if Jason Tatum demonstrated defensively that he's willing to be that guy, too.
Well, I watched the Kevin Durant Brooklyn series. I thought he was terrific.
He was in the first round.
Well, yeah, but can you not argue? There's an argument to be made if you look at the minutes played. Tatum just wore out. 7-game series. Be the best player.
Yeah, he was up and down in the Miami series as well. It's a matter. Look, if a guy wears out, that's one thing. He got tentative.
Don't you believe that Marcus Smart? This is the best of Marcus.
You are talking to the wrong guy because I am a Marcus Smart guy.
I like him too.
Well, but I like him because of the grit that he brings to that team that they can't get anyplace else. And by the way, at least from what I've heard, I would not count on if Boston is the place that Bradley Beal would go.
Exciting.
If he's going, it's not happening. So by that, I've heard that he's still torn. I know it's been reported that he's decided, but all indications at this point, if he's torn, he's probably staying in Washington. And based on my intel, if Boston is the place that he would go to, it's not happening.
All right, listen, I think LeBron's very calculated and measured.
Yep.
I don't think he's...
I think that's safe to say.
Okay, so he's still an elite player when he's on the floor. The idea that, he's just going to sit back and watch, I think some of this Kyrie going to the Lakers stuff, I think he knows Kyrie really well. And he knows I briefly made it work. KD's just a hooper. He's not a stabilizing force. He's his friend. LeBron knows I work with everybody. Even I couldn't corral this guy. I think he likes Kyrie rumors out there. The Nets overreact, sign him to a long deal, and KD's tied to Kyrie forever. You're not winning a title with those two. I think a lot of this Lakers stuff, I think it'd be fascinating to watch AD for Kyrie. It's probably not going to happen, but that's what we do. We speculate.
Right.
All these Lakers-Kyrie rumors, do you buy any of them?
No, I don't. It doesn't make basketball sense to me, and it doesn't make sense for LeBron James. LeBron James is what he is elite at this point is as a scorer.
Yeah.
He was at his worst as a playmaker. He's not a defender anymore. He can score.
Yeah.
What does Kyrie do?
Score.
He scores. So I know that there's two things on LeBron's agenda, and I don't know which one is first. But one is obviously the scoring list.
Yeah.
Passing Kareem.
Yeah.
And I would assume he'd still like to play for a title if he can.
Yeah.
Well, how does Kyrie get you any closer to that when defense was your great issue? And while, yes, you're going to add scoring, but you're also going to take away scoring opportunities from LeBron. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, basketball-wise, or for LeBron James in terms of what he's trying to accomplish.
NBA draft tonight, Chet Holmgren. I would take him at 2 because I got a bunch of picks, and I think in order to not be back at the top of the draft, you got to take some big swings. Even if you miss, you owe it to yourself with 18 picks in 5 years. Would you take Chet Holmgren 2? What do you hear?
I would take him 2 before I take him 1, because the one thing that's being ignored in all of this is the pressure on a number 1.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you are in your evolution as a player. You're expected to be the best player in the draft, and you're expected to be the best player in the draft right now.
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren is not going to be that. Now, everything I've heard is he's a gym rat. Has a great work ethic, but physically he has to improve. And the challenge is that and Mark Few kind of gave it to you. He's an interior defensive player. He's a perimeter offensive player, which means he's always going to be switching and cross-matching. You don't ideally want that, especially for a guy coming in. You want to say, this is where you're going to play. This is what you're going to do. We're going to figure everything else out. So that's where the challenge is. Chet Holmgren comes in from Gonzaga, and he's now the number 1 pick. And now he has to be better than Banchero and Jabari Smith and Jaden Ivey. And if that doesn't happen, then the chances that it's going to negatively affect his development is great. So going to Oklahoma City and being part of that, where there are low expectations.
College town,
and nobody's going to pay attention if you have a bad game. I mean, who really paid attention to anybody having an off night in Oklahoma City, right? Nobody. So that would make the best
That's
fit.
great. Great stuff today. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.